Peace and love, everybody, and welcome back to another Sunday Hope and Healing session. I'm Royce Fletcher Thomason, and we're here to, through the Sunday Hope and Healing sessions, bring you hope, encouragement, insight, and actual healing, utilizing the methodology referred to as Transcending the Matrix that sees essentially all of what we're experiencing in life as a human being on planet Earth as being really a function of causes that we typically don't properly identify as we go about seeking to address the symptoms. But this is a holistic approach that looks at things from the point of the causal root, things that are often counterintuitive, in fact. And we've seen a lot of medical miracles happen with people in terms of their physical health, as well as mental, emotional, psychological, spiritual health as well. And so that's what we're here to do. We do this Sundays at 1 o'clock Eastern time. Translate that to whatever time zone that you're in. And so today we have our topic, which is really in a way kind of piggybacking off of a topic from a couple of weeks ago. I actually played for our Sunday Hope and Healing session 2 weeks ago on the 14th of January, 2024. A replay of when I spoke earlier that same morning at a church based out of Detroit, Transforming Love Community, or community, I should say, based out of Detroit. Transforming Love Community, and we played that back. But the theme for that was called Answering the Identity Question. Answer the identity question. And I said then, even as I was speaking for TLC, for Transforming Love Communities, that I wish I could do this in a 4-part series, because there was just so much there, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to cover everything in the limits of the time that we had available on that day. And so last week we went in a little bit of a different direction. I always pray on what we're going to be focusing on each week for the Sunday Hope and Healing session. And last week we focused on transcending the matrix of war and bringing peace to the Middle East, specifically the Gaza Strip. And now we're kind of back to revisiting this thing of identity. And so if you whether on YouTube or Facebook or wherever it is that you're watching this, you may see the caption for this video listed as "All humans have been suffering an identity crisis." All humans have been suffering an identity crisis. And I know that's a very strong statement to make. All humans have been suffering an identity crisis. This whole concept of an identity crisis was definitely something that was placed in my awareness. As we don't really often understand what it is that's at the root of a lot of the suffering that it is that we experience, right? Some of you may or may not be familiar with Siddhartha Gautama. He was a prince born in the East, and he actually grew up in an environment where all that he saw was prosperity. All that he saw was youthful people that were healthy and happy and bountiful. That was all that he had been exposed to. His parents saw to it that he wasn't going to be exposed to seeing people old or people suffering in any way. And one day, actually, something happened, and he did see somebody who was older, somebody who was struggling, someone who was having a difficult time. And he kind of ran away from home, went out, and ended up on this lifelong journey of understanding human suffering and how to alleviate that. And that person became known as the Buddha, right? Whole religion ended up being started um, based on that, and based on his discoveries from the things that he uncovered in his life journey. And not last week, a couple of weeks ago, when we were dealing with the concept of answering the identity question, one of the things that was discussed was, how we follow up the words "I am," right? What words we put behind "I am," that the words "I am" are the first person conjugation of the infinitive "to be." I am, he is, she is, we are. Those are conjugations of the infinitive "to be." And like in a biblical context, uh, I was sharing the story of Moses and the burning bush and him receiving his calling, if you will, in terms of uh, participating in the redemption and the freeing of the children of Israel, right? And so, as that story goes, he was out tending his father-in-law's sheep and saw this bush that was burning. It was on fire, but it wasn't burning, and he heard a voice speaking to him, the voice of God speaking to him through this bush. The bush was there, kind of grabbed his attention, the fact that it was on fire but not burning. And uh, he was given a message to go to the Pharaoh and to tell the Pharaoh to let my people go. And Moses asked the question, "Who should I tell him sent me?" And what's referred to as the tetragrammaton, the Hebrew letters Yad, He, Vav, He, sometimes pronounced. Sometimes people transliterate that as Jehovah, sometimes Yahweh. And what it essentially means is I am what I am, or I am that I am. Um, Another translation of that is the pre-existing one, and talked about a few of those things. But speaking to is the ultimate source of all existence. And when I say that we as human beings suffer from an identity crisis, let's first start off with this um, kind of a truth of the human experience, the human condition, is that suffering is part of what comes with the deal. Kind of what comes with um, the experience of being born, our spirits coming into this physical plane um, of the third dimension of planet Earth, right? There's no matter who a person is, no matter how what their financial status might be, or what country they're born in, or what their gender is, or what their uh, ethnicity is, or what language they speak, or any of these different things, a commonality amongst all people is that there, at some point, there's some suffering that takes place. At some point, there's some pain that takes place. At some point, there's there are experiences that just don't feel very good. There are experiences that, if we had an opportunity, we probably would bypass having to go through altogether for the most part, right? And so it's a reality that all of us suffer from something at some point. It could be a heartbreak, it could be financial turmoil, it could be um, the state of affairs and on your job, or in the country that you live in, or in your city. It could be the transition of a loved one. It could be um, the loss of a certain type of experience that you enjoyed. It could be the noticing changes that are taking place in your body as you progress in years. It could be seeing somebody else um, progressing while you seem to be staying in the same place. It could be all types of different things, but all humans experience some level of suffering at some point. And I'm saying that we all to a degree suffer from an identity crisis. And what am I getting at in terms of saying that we're suffering from an identity crisis? One thing that I'm saying is that we all have an identity crisis, recognized or unrecognized. And the other thing that I'm saying is that the reason that we experience so much of the pain that we do experience is because we have forgotten who we are. We've somehow detached from who we are. We've become blind to who it is that we really are at our core. Okay. And so a lot of the things that people do, a lot of things that people do to compensate for things not going a certain way in their life, the way that people will self medicate, whether that is through drugs or alcohol or through promiscuous sex or through um, just being addicted to electronic devices or any of the various things that people do, overeating, shopping retail, there are a lot of different ways that people self medicate because it's difficult to deal with the pain. In fact, most pain is not actually even embraced. A lot of the human experience is spent in an attempt to avoid pain. And what I want to say is that the true depth of the pain that we as human beings experience on planet Earth is a loss of a sense of identity, a loss of a sense of true identity. In reality, who we are and who we think that we are, there's a disconnect somehow, right? And so a lot of times who we think we are is based on changing conditions. It's based on conditions of one sort or another. A lot of times we base our identity on who it is that we're in relationship to. Sometimes we base our identity on um, on what it is that we get paid to do, what it is that we're doing for a living. You know, when I say basing our identity based on relationship to another, we may base our identity on being a mother or a father or a husband or a wife or a mom or a dad, or we might base our identity on how other people perceive us. How other people perceive us, we take on to mean uh, who it is that we are. Based on how other people treat us, we determine who it is that we are. There are people who have a whole lot of stuff, a whole lot of money, and people are around them while they have that money, but then when it's gone, the people disappear. And then they end up suffering from a loss of identity. A person who has found their sense of identity in being perhaps a stay-at-home mom, and then the children grow up and they leave the nest and then end up wrestling with this sense of loss of identity. A person who's worked on a job for X number of years, and then they either lose their job or they're no longer working that job. There tends to be oftentimes a sense of loss of identity. If I'm not this, then who am I? Right? If I'm not doing this, then what value do I have? And so there's all of this stuff that's really based on external things that ends up being the basis of how we identify ourselves, who we perceive ourselves to be. And then we make statements of our identity based on whatever our current situation might be. I'm broke, I'm sick, I'm tired, I'm afraid. Whatever a person's temporary situation might be end up making I am statements about it frequently, thus disempowering oneself in the process, because what one is then in essence saying is, I identify as, I'm basing my beingness on this, or I'm basing my beingness on that. Now, I don't want to go too deep into that in terms of the negative, the transitory. I just wanted to kind of lay a foreground, particularly if you didn't catch the broadcast on answering the identity question. If you did not, please go back and check that out. It wasn't that we were doing healing on that. It was just talking and sharing in that instance from a couple of weeks ago on answering the identity question. On today, we're going to actually do some healing, however. And so do you know who it is that you really are? Do you know who it is that you really are? You're not your fears. You're not your doubts. You're not your worries. You're not your money. You're not your body. No matter how in shape or how out of shape it might be, you're not it. You're not your belief systems. You're not any of those things. You're not your age. You're not any of those things. The essence of who you really are is divine. You can't be anything but divine. Now, in this earth realm, you are divinity walking, but you might not be necessarily walking in your divinity. You might not necessarily, you might be very disconnected from your true essence. Your true essence is God. Your true essence is divinity itself. Your true essence is pure love and divine light. Now, it's easier to say that than it is, and it's easier to intellectually accept it even than it is to fully embody that in the totality of how you identify yourself and how you see yourself. And a reality is that the ego can also take that and run away with it. And you can become kind of egotistical. You can see yourself, start seeing yourself as better than someone else. One of my favorite poems is a poem called Desiderata. And one of the things in that poem that it says is it cautions about comparing yourself to others. It cautions about comparing oneself to others. I always said that if I had a daughter, that was going to be on her wall when she came home from the hospital. Just as I said, if I had a son, the poem "If" by Rudyard Kipling would be on his wall when he came home from the hospital. But sometimes the ego will want to take this idea of being better than somebody else or less than somebody else. A reality is there has never been a soul who walked the earth greater than you. There has never been a soul who has walked the earth greater than you. On the flip side of that, there has never been a soul whose presence has ever dwelt on this earth that has been less than you. So often, we as human beings, we find all of these different ways of engaging in these power struggles, right? That's a thing that human beings do. Whether it's a drug dealer fighting over territory, whether it's a politician fighting for office, where it's two employees competing for a position, whether it's the two partners in a relationship struggling for power in that. The battle is always a fight for power, a fight for energy on some level, right? And the reason that we do that is because we've been suffering from an identity crisis. We've forgotten who we are, and we've forgotten who the other, whoever else it is that we're fighting with is, in whatever way. When we know truly who it is that we are, when we know truly who it is that we are, we can also simultaneously know truly who it is that somebody else is. And so when we get to a point when we're able to operate from a place of really living in our divinity, then yes, we have these earth suits, we have these physical bodies, we have these emotions, we have these thoughts. Some of the emotions are pleasant, some of them are unpleasant. Some of the thoughts are righteous and some of them are not righteous. We have all of these things that are part of our expression, part of our experience while we're living in this earth realm, but that's none of those things are actually who we are. You're not your zodiac sign, right? You're not your gender, you're not your age, you're not your sexual orientation, you're not your political affiliation, you're not your level of education or whatever your socioeconomic status is. None of those things are you. And the reality is, if all of those things were taken away, you would still be you. You would still be you. And oftentimes we end up going through this pain and this struggle and this heartache and this difficulty because we've lost something that we have presumed to define our identity. But your divinity can never be taken away from you. And so who you really are can never be taken away from you. And so today's healing is going to be about helping us to reconnect, re-identify with the essence of who we are, to be able to recalibrate, if you will, our perception about who it is that we are. Okay. When we're really dwelling from a divine consciousness, life becomes a little different, a lot different. I've had moments that I've operated from that space, and I've had a whole lot of moments that I haven't. And I can tell you that the moments of operating from that space are a lot more empowering. All right. And so that's what our focus is going to be on today, is on re-identifying ourselves with our divinity. Right. And so I'm going to start with a prayer, and then I'm going to begin doing this work of transcending the matrix. You'll hear me say some words, but the beauty and the power and the magic of what's happening isn't really simply in the words that are being spoken. There are other things that are that are taking place in invisible realms that are totally transcendent of the words that are coming out of my mouth. And there are things that will be happening that are beyond the words that I'll be saying. But if you would like to participate in this, if you would like to be able to more fully identify with the divinity that is at the source of your essence, then I invite you to join in and participate in this. If you feel like you know somebody who would also be able to benefit from this, or would also perhaps resonate with what it is that we're sharing here, I invite you to share that with them as well. So again, we're going to start with a prayer. God, you who is the source of all beingness, you who is the essence of all that is, you who is not only pure love and divine light, but source of pure love and divine light. In gratitude and In purity of heart in this moment, I identify you as a healer, as a deliverer, as a transformer, as a revealer. And through the power of pure love and your Holy Spirit, I give thanks for this opportunity to be able to demonstrate you as all of the above. The purpose of neutralizing the root cause of all suffering of identity crisis, as well as all cumulative effects. Of every soul who chooses to participate in this healing, chooses to make room to benefit from this healing. Neutralizing those issues from the point of the causal root and the entire energetic structure of every strand of DNA and every cell of each person's body. And transmuting that into and replacing it with the profound joy and freedom and empowerment of identifying completely and solely with our identity, and the revelation of being able to identify the divinity within each soul with whom we encounter in this life journey. Thus further reinforcing the divinity that is at the core of our own existence and our identity as divine beings. And I bear witness to our wholeness on this date and in this time and space called now. And even making it retroactive for all points in this thing called time, past, present, and future. I affirm it is done, it is done, it is done. Ashe. Amen. All right, let's get into it, folks. And peace and blessings to everybody who's here today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your presence on the planet. Thank you for choosing to show up. Thank you for being one who takes your journey as something of importance. All right. I want to honor that in you today. Not everybody is here. Not everybody is in this frame of mind. But I thank you for being here, for how you are choosing to show up, and for wanting to be the best version of yourself. So let's get into the healing, shall we? So I want to first look at the collective consciousness of humanity. Throughout all generations of time, collective consciousness of humanity. And deeply ingrained psychological imprints. Alrighty. From the first human on the planet to the last. Okay. And I want to look at over identification with the five physical senses: hearing, tasting, smelling, seeing, and hearing, tasting, smelling, seeing, and feeling in a tactile way. Alrighty. So what happens is what we perceive through our senses, all it is taking in information. That's all we're doing, is actually taking in information. Then that information ends up being processed in the brain, and it ends up being processed in the brain through the filters that we already have established there. And the filters that we have established there are mainly things that are passed down from one to another, and things that we kind of collectively agree upon. Okay, and so let's look at transcending the five physical senses, not betraying the five physical senses, but transcending the five physical senses and being able to tap into um, the higher quality of sensation, and being able to sense the presence of the divine within us and within others. The ability to see beyond our physical eyes, with the ability to see through the eyes of spirit, to be able to hear beyond the physical ears, but to be able to hear through the ears of spirit, being able to feel beyond our physical sense of touch, but to be able to feel the presence of spirit. All right. To be able to taste and see that God is good and that it's all working together for our good. Okay. All right. Let's look at spiritual amnesia. I want to look at a little spiritual amnesia. Um, in the process of coming to earth as a human being, we've forgotten who it is that we really are, who we were when we were at home. We're all visitors on this planet. We're all visitors on this planet. And um, in some communities, the African American community, of which I'm a part, certainly uses this language, and others perhaps as well. Sometimes refer to funerals even as homegoings. Where is your home? Your home is the place that you came from, your point of origin, if you will, right? You leave and run to the grocery store, and then you end up going back home. That's where you started off at, right? Um, Sometimes people like me who've relocated and live in places other than where they were born and where they grew up talk about going back home. You know, for me, that's Detroit. You talk about going back home. Um, for people who've been away to school and have graduated or gone on from school, and they come back for a homecoming, the place that they kind of started off. All right. And so we've kind of disassociated what our true home is to this transitory stuff in the earth realm, maybe whatever your physical address is, right? Or maybe the country that you live in or the city that you live in. Those things are transitory. Those things are fleeting and passing. Um, and so, because we are identifying home often as something that's in flux, something that we might not be able to completely depend on to the degree that we would like to, that kind of feeds into some of these other challenges that we deal with. And sometimes it makes it difficult to feel really completely safe or to feel really completely at home, right? But our true home is in the heavens. Mm, I just had a moment. Just had a moment. So let's deal with this thing of feeling that we've left home and can't go back, or fear that we've left home and that we can't go back. And transmute that into the awareness. mm, Into the awareness that home is where the heart is. And to being able to align our hearts with our true home. Sometimes in relationships, when you find somebody that just feels really, really comfortable and safe to you, sometimes it feels like home, like you're coming back home, right? Reminding you, it's not the whole thing, but it's on some level reminding you of your true home, right? Reminding you of your true home as a divine being, your true home is heaven. Jesus was quoted as saying, if people try to tell you that the kingdom of heaven is over there, or if it's over there, don't believe that. Don't get caught up into that. I'm telling you, the kingdom of heaven is within you and all around you, right? And so let's um, work on tapping back into the dwelling in the presence of heaven, while at the same time not being so heavenly focused that we're doing no earthly good. Because that's an interesting balance there. So let's look at okay, so what's coming up, and I'm feeling guided to jump back to something momentarily. Let's look at actually being able to operate in the earth realm, operating from the space of um, living authentically in our divinity. All right. To word that differently, operating truly from a God centered space. All right. All right. Now, something else I want to touch on is feeling homesick. I know that I have experienced this in my personal life, in my life specifically. Um, I sometimes have had faint memories of a time before I was on Earth. And there have been so many things that I've seen and experienced on planet Earth and observed on planet Earth that didn't make sense to me. That didn't make I couldn't make sense of. And with the thought, this isn't how it's supposed to be. This isn't what I'm used to. This isn't what home is like, right? Um, and like is the case with many star seeds, so-called star seeds, is the case with many light workers, that there can be a bit of an internal conflict, a degree of cognitive dissonance. This is what life is supposed to be, and yet this is what life is. And there's a disconnect between this inner sense of how things are supposed to be and what the actual lived experience is, right? And so there can be with that a sense of homesickness, a sense of people frequently um, in a cry out for help will attempt to kill themselves to get away from the pain, or to maybe try to make their way back home, you know. And it can be very, very difficult for people to deal with certain crises that they're experiencing. And on some level, maybe deeply, deeply, deeply subconscious level, there's a desire to return home to the the safe space, the space where there's true unconditional love, unlike what humans actually demonstrate while calling it unconditional love, right? And so I want to look at deep-seated, deep-seated homesickness. And I want to also look at guilt and shame related to self-betrayal. Mm. Guilt and shame, whew, boy, that's a big issue. Guilt and shame related to self-betrayal. All right, so we want to address that at the root cause. Self-betrayal isn't something that is unique to you. It's something that has been present within every human being on some level. And the way that we truly betray ourselves, how we betray who we are, is by living in a way that reflects something other than the truth that we are pure love and divine light. The way that we know ourselves to be pure love and divine light is when that's all that we see pure love and divine light in all of life's circumstances, in ourselves and in every other person, right? That's not something that's easy to do for humans because we experience people having attitudes with us. We experience pain in connection with other people. We want to blame them. We want to demonize them. We experience people who look, think, speak, act, believe, communicate differently than we do. And so we create judgments around them. In the process of those judgments and those condemnations, we've turned a back on the truth of who it is that we really are. We're not operating from that space of pure love and divine light. We're operating from a space of darkness. And because we are beings of pure light, when we attempt to operate from a space of darkness, there's something that just doesn't feel right on the inside of us. Nonetheless, we can still end up experiencing dopamine triggers in the process of that, and cortisol and adrenaline rushes in the process of that end up creating addictions to this kind of drama. And so we end up getting further engulfed in um, in the ways of betrayal of our own true selves. And so let's look at deep, deep, deep forgiveness towards ourselves for the judgments that we've had towards others and the way that we've condemned other people. I want to look also real quickly. This is just coming up at religious indoctrination. I said 2 weeks ago in this, last week actually, in this thing on Transcending the Matrix of War, that what's going on between the Israelis and the Palestinians in Gaza Strip is really just unresolved family issues. They're daddy issues that are going on from a father not properly handling his business. That father was Abraham or Abraham. And he sent one son away and his oldest son away, and he had another son with his wife, and that son got the good treatment, so to speak. And there are these two factions that have been for thousands of years clashing with one another. And I'm going to ask right now that we all, from a space of genuine compassion for ourselves, for the judgments that we've had, no matter what side of the fence that we've been on, judgments that we've had towards some other group, maybe another ethnic group, another racial group, another religious group, another political group. I'd like to invite us to touch and to tap into deep forgiveness for ourselves, for condemning our brother and condemning our sister, and for failing to even see them as our brother or our sister. To forgive ourselves for turning our back on the purity of our own hearts, on the purity of our own vision, and seeing through eyes of condemnation and judgment instead of eyes of love and compassion and understanding and acceptance and transcendence. I want to actually also, in the midst of this, clear off ossification and calcification of the pineal gland and infuse the pineal gland with light and create a clear line of communication between the pineal gland and the heart. And clear away any darkness from the heart. And open the heart to a flow of pure love. and divine light. And now let's address the heart. Let's address the heart from the standpoint um, of bitterness and resentment and hatred and animosity and guilt. And let's transmute those things into peace, love, grace. Peace with oneself and all others. All right, let's look at, actually, let me just pause for a moment and address belief systems. Belief systems are running our lives. Our belief systems are running our lives. This isn't to say that all belief systems are bad, but belief systems by nature tend to be very limiting. And the nature of God is limitlessness. And that's oftentimes what ends up contributing to these different power dynamics that we end up engaging in. When really the only one that we need to be engaging in any power dynamic with is the version of ourselves that we are today, or the version of ourselves that we were yesterday with the version of ourselves that we choose to be today. Right. All right. So let's look at reconciling misguided belief systems and replacing them with just starting off with elevated belief systems. Belief systems that are closer to the greater truth. Okay. Nature abhors a vacuum. You don't want to just be left stripped of your belief systems with nothing to replace them. So I want to honor and I want to respect that. So let's actually transcend lower level belief systems with at least higher level belief systems. Whatever is higher from wherever it is that you are right now. All right. And then furthermore, with the recognition that the belief systems have their purpose, but none of the belief systems are the ultimate truth. Okay. All right. All right. Let's focus for a moment on the benefits that we get from seeing things through the lenses of the matrix rather than seeing things through the lenses of the truth. And actually be able to feel completely safe and completely free to see in a transcendent way the truth of who we really are and the truth of who everyone else is as well. Thank you. All righty. Well, this is something that a lot of healing can be done surrounding, frankly. But we're going to spend a little bit more time on it, and then we'll close the session out today. And anybody who's out there today who just wants to say hello, let us know that you're out there. Please feel free to do so in the comments. We're always happy to acknowledge whoever's present. Okay, so let's look at, I want to take a moment and look at, I want to look at the curse of original sin and complete reconciliation and redemption from that. In Christianity, it said that if you can say with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus the Christ is the Son of God and was risen from the dead, that you should be saved. Welcome Jesus into your heart, then you should be saved. There's truth in that, and there's a total missing of the truth in that also. Just in terms of how people are understanding that and perceiving that. When you really can be present and totally embrace and welcome into your heart a reality that transcends your physical and that speaks to the presence of divinity even in the physicality, and let that be your focal point and your guide and your true identity. That's where the liberation is. And so let's look at FOMO, fear of missing out, and replace it with the embracing of a whole new and improved world. And also addressing the grieving of the opportunity cost that we're passing up on. Let's look at the grieving of the old way, the old self, the grieving of the old way of identifying with self, the grieving of not necessarily fitting in with folks in the same way anymore, or fear of not fitting in anymore. And transmute that into and replace it with the joy and the fulfillment and the satisfaction of being a trailblazer, maybe in your family, maybe in your community, because you're seeing things differently and you're operating differently. All right. All right, let's look at feeling the support of other divine beings that you have somehow deemed to be greater than yourself. And complete openness and receptivity to the support of highly evolved spiritual beings who are in touch with their true identity, supporting you in being in touch and identifying with your true identity. The Heart Sutra has gone beyond the beyond. All hail the enlightened one. And every time a soul re-identifies with its true self, the heavens rejoice. The reality is we're all just here having experiences, We're all here as divine beings having experiences on the way to remembering our divinity in our humanity. And we're all going to get there, although it might not seem like it. It might not seem like it at all. And so let's look at anger against the system or frustration with the game. All right, so let's look at transcending that and transmuted it into acceptance that the game is what the game is, and the recognition that you have chosen to be a willing participant in the game. And when you come to the reality of the truth of who it is that you really are, then you no longer need to play the game and are therefore a victor. you've in video game terms, you've conquered the last level. All right. So let's actually kind of boost us all in terms of the sense of victory and utter ecstasy that comes with the revelation of remembering and finally remembering and identifying who it is that you truly are, living that out and feeling no need to believe or experience or live out anything else. Last thing, let's look at fear of dying. All right. All right. The reality is you don't have a fear of dying. Your ego has a fear of dying. It wants to stay tapped into that sense of separate self. The part of you that's trying to edge God out is wanting to survive. It fights for its own survival and it makes you think that it's you. It's like if you're having cravings for sugar, it's not you that's craving the sugar, it's the parasites that are in your body that are craving the sugar and making you think that it's you, right? And so let's fortify us all. Let's fortify us all for the embrace of the journey and the satisfaction of the arrival back home. And the enthusiasm of welcoming other people, of welcoming other souls back home too. All right, so clear these levels of the matrix. Matrix grid lines, incidents, Akashic records, universes, dimensions, times, judgments, and unknowns. Transmute, purify, clear through the light of the Holy Spirit now, henceforth, and forevermore, for all generations of time, past, present, and future, with absolute, complete, and permanent healing, with true perception of our true identity. And so, God, thank you so much for the healing that's taken place today, for every soul who's chosen to participate in this. Thank you for every photon of light that has appeared, that has shown up, every matrix grid line that's been transmuted, every false thought that's been overcome, every revelation that's taken place, every degree of attunement or alignment that we've moved closer to in you. Thank you for that time, that moment, that holy moment of revelation of our true selves, of our true selves, and our identity and our identification with our true selves. Thank you for all of these gifts of your divine love. I affirm it is done, it is done, it is done. Well, many blessings to you today, everybody. I don't know who all was tuned in, what your name might be, but I do know who you are. You're a being of pure love and divine light. And I thank you for showing up in this space today. Thank you for choosing to be here out of every place else you could have been or anything else that you could have been doing. You were here for a reason because there's something in you that is already in touch with your divinity. Otherwise, you wouldn't have even been attracted to have shown up here in the first place. So thank you, kindred spirit, for being here. If you at all are interested in learning more about the work that we do with Transcending the Matrix, which, yeah, on some level, it's a healing modality. Yes, I've seen things like broken bones repaired and chronic pain alleviated. I've seen blood pressure go down. I've seen people in the midst of having a nervous breakdown, you know, enter into a totally different place. I've seen a lot of wonderful, wonderful, wonderful things happen in terms of a more mundane level of people's lives. And yes, it is a healing modality in that sense. But even beyond that, what it is to me, it's a way for the practitioner, for the people who are actually helping people to experience these medical miracles. It's a way for us to be able to confront the matrix that clouds our own perspective and our own vision of reality, and be able to see a greater truth, to be able to align with a greater degree of love than ever before, to be able to align with a greater sense of truth than ever before, uh, to be elevated in our own understanding, in our own awareness, and to operate in a greater sense of the truth of who it is that we really are. Because every time we get to participate in the healing of another, something profoundly transformative takes place within us. And that's what I'm really, really, really all about. I'm very thankful for the opportunity to help somebody no longer experience pain. And I've been blessed to be able to be a participant in that on a whole bunch of occasions with people all over the world. What really matters to me even more is our community of the Transcending the Matrix family. And we perhaps have some folks who are part of that family who are here today, perhaps some who will choose to kind of become part of the Transcending the Matrix family. What Transcending the Matrix is really all about is being free from our illusions, right? Being able to see beyond all of the falsities, not in anger, but in joy and love. In joy and love, and to be able to truly celebrate this whole thing. You know, none of this stuff is real. Next Sunday morning at 10 a.m., I'm going to be speaking at Transforming Love Community. I'm going to be probably in the same room, but it'll be broadcast on the Facebook page and the YouTube page of Shahira Stevens. And we're dealing with the theme or the topic, the only thing on earth that is real. Ain't nothing on earth real but one thing. There's only one thing in all the earth that's real. Come check that out. Anyway, what our work in Transcending the Matrix is all about is seeing beyond all of the stuff that isn't real. And in the ancient Sanskrit, there's a word, Maya, that is frequently translated as illusion, but what it really means is that things aren't as they seem. To be able to see things from a place of, from a truly enlightened perspective, not a pretend enlightened perspective, but to truly be able to see beyond the illusion, beyond the way that things appear, to the greater truth of what really is. And when we're able to see beyond the appearances and to see what truly is, it is profoundly liberating. And we can exist in a state of deep, 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 pure joy. All right. That wraps us up for today. If you're interested in learning this work, I'd love to share it with you. We've got training coming up, or initiation coming up next month. If you are, again, at all interested, reach out to me on Facebook or on YouTube at Royce Fletcher Thomas, and it's just send me a direct message. If you don't hear back from me within 24 to 48 hours, reach out to me again. Sometimes my mailbox gets inundated and I just miss things. Please don't take it personal. And if we're not connected, send a connection request, because sometimes if we're not connected, it goes into a different mailbox and I don't necessarily even know that it's out there. But anyway, again, I wish you all well as you go forth the remainder of your day. We're all in this thing together ultimately. Ultimately, each soul on planet Earth is endeavoring to enter into that sustainable state of supreme satisfaction. And until we see one another again, I send you forth with peace and love. Catch you next time.